Welcome, family, to another edition of the IDP Xpressions Network News. We're in a different platform tonight. Want to explain all that shortly. Hopefully, the family had a easy time to navigate, but it just goes to show that no matter what systemic situations we're up against, that we're not going to allow that to slow us down, and we're going to continue to push forward. So I thank you all for tuning in, and we're going to jump into it. But before I do that, I do have a new YouTube channel. It's at the top of the chat. So if you would kindly, when you get an opportunity, click the link, subscribe, and then hit that alert button, alert bell, to let you know when we're going to be broadcasting again. That'd be greatly appreciated, as well as your brother has joined Fanbase, and Fanbase is a Black-owned social media outlet that allows its participants to actually get paid for their work. So if you get an opportunity, go over to Fanbase and join as well. We'll be uploading a lot of videos, and since we're going to have to start over, we might as well start there. So tonight's broadcast is going to be an interesting one, because we're going to deal with some of the things that took place. And over the past few weeks, I have been very busy, so I hadn't had the opportunity to cover these stories, but now I got time. So without further ado, let's take our attention to the family out in Mississippi, shall we? Where, oops, what happened? Didn't share the page? We'll fix that right away, y'all. You see, we do these shows live, so there we go. So, the grand jury declines to indict woman in Emmett Till killing. All right, this is from the AP Associated Press, and here goes the following. Excuse me while I do some housekeeping around here. So, what the hell is going on? So, Mississippi grand jury has declined to indict the white woman whose accusations set off the lynching of Black teenager Emmett Till nearly 70 years ago, most likely closing the case that shocked the nation and galvanized the modern-day civil rights movement. Now, let's be clear about something. All right. First and foremost, when the news media covers these stories, they always try to protect the identity of white people in general in regards to these stories, and women in particular. So this is Carolyn Donham. All right. Carolyn Donham was the woman who went to her husband and the other white men in her community, and she protested to them the offense, and she made the claim that Emmett Till had made physical contact with her while visiting her grocery store earlier that day, which, in the racist South, in the Jim Crow South, these white terrorists then went to Emmett Till's uncle's house, for which he was staying at, barged in with shotguns in their hand. 2:00 in the morning, dragged Emmett Till out of his bed, brought him to Carolyn Donham as she was confronted with him. Now, here's the issue. Here's the bigger problem. There was an arrest warrant issued for her for the kidnapping of Emmett Till during that time. That's what this whole convening of the grand jury was about, bringing her to justice, as she later revealed in a book that was published a few years ago, that she lied about the occurrence, the encounter she had with Emmett Till. Unfortunately, Emmett Till lost his life, and his mother's decision, Mamie Till's decision, to have an open casket for anybody to see the heartbreaking interview that was conducted when they asked her, when the coroner wasn't going to allow her to see the disfigured body that and the damage that was done to her son, and the funeral director. They weren't going to allow her to see it, but she forced their hand and made them actually open up the casket so that she could see what was going on. And when she saw that, she demanded to have an open casket funeral because she said she wanted the world to see what they did to her baby. She also said something at the funeral that was very profound. And it's something, a lesson that we could really learn from today. She said, once upon a time, being a nurse in Chicago, having a good job, having her own apartment, she felt pretty good, about the situations in the North. And she said the troubles of the South were the Negroes' troubles of the South. She said, now that I see that when one of us has a problem, it's a problem for us all. And we better learn from this lesson. But apparently, some 70 years later, we're still struggling with the idea of actually having a community response to anything that happens to Black people these days. So I'm going to continue to read on. So after more than 7 hours of testimony, from investigators and witnesses, the LaFleur County grand jury last week determined that there was insufficient evidence to indict Carolyn Bryant Donham on the charges of kidnapping and manslaughter. LaFleur County District Attorney Dwayne Richardson said in a news release Tuesday. Now, here's another problem with this. One of the biggest problems with this is the fact that, as a district attorneys and grand juries operate in a way that a grand jury can be swayed in any direction the district attorney decides. The fact that you had an overwhelming majority of Black people on this grand jury was even more troubling. But this speaks to power, and the power that these Black elected officials answer to. This is why when people say you have to get out and vote, get out and vote, and get out and vote, I have a strong, consternation with the whole concept, because even when you vote and get Black faces in those places, they still don't represent the best interest of the Black community. And even other Black members of the community in these particular times, such as a grand jury, people selected for the grand jury, they had an obligation to their community, because it's ironic that as Black people feel as though that there's some type of overarching moral code, this standard of morality, Christian-based morality, that doesn't apply to individual groups, ethnic groups, and so forth. So therefore, you have so many Black people who will throw other Black people and families and history under the bus just to stick their chest out and say that they did the right thing. Well, what was the right thing in this particular case? You see, Carolyn Donham was she was able to escape justice for over 70 years. All right. 70 years. Well, almost 70, 68 years, but who's counting? 87 years old. Now, why is this important? Why is this important? And why do we talk about power in the Black community, lack thereof, and so forth. Why do we talk about this whole notion of what power looks like? Okay, I'm going to show you something. All right, give me 2 seconds. As y'all know, we always do our things live, so I want to show y'all this because in the Jewish community, they don't play that shit. Here's a case of a 96-year-old former Nazi concentration camp secretary who absconded before her trial was set to start, stayed almost completely silent as she finally appeared in court in Germany on Tuesday. That's right. So the Nazi Holocaust took place 80 years ago. It's almost 90 years ago, in fact. Right? Start 1933. And this woman, all right, I want to keep that in mind. I want y'all to understand that and keep that in mind. A woman was prosecuted for her Nazi-era crimes as she was, they actually stated, Irmgard Furcher is charged with complicity in the killing or attempted killing of more than 11,000 people at the Stuhor camp in occupied Poland. 11,000 people. In other words, she committed a crime that she committed a war crime. And here's the thing: when you have power, you can actually punish people for harming you. See, that's the lesson here today, y'all. You got to be able to have power in order to punish people for harming you. And we don't seem to have enough of that power. If you look in the thumbnail, these are my good brothers with the Black Liberation Movement standing on the Greenville courthouse steps in Greenville, Mississippi. And, they're fighting. They're trying to amass the type of power to make the system accountable to Black people. But it's hard when you have other Black people, such as the grand jury and the district attorney that was elected by primarily Black people in the blackest state in the union, based on population percentage. You still don't have the power to provoke justice. Now, there's another case that's going on that we need to be paying attention to. And that is the situation that happened to one Donald Trump. And I'm going to tell you why that's important. All right. Donald Trump, as most people know, there was a raid on his Mar-a-Lago property in Florida, based on the fact that they believe that he's a shill for Russia, for communist Russia, and they also believe that Donald Trump is he's a convenient scapegoat. This all is preliminary work put in place for the next presidential election because he's the only viable candidate. But I want to talk about something because it speaks to the raid, and I'm going to make this a little bigger so y'all can see. All right, it speaks to the raid, and this is a right-wing rag, but I want y'all to pay attention. All right, other FBI raids also carried out on 2 Black organizations and their leaders July 29th. These raids grew out of a Florida grand jury indictment. Wow, a grand jury indictment, right? And amazing that there was another grand jury indictment where Moscow resident Alexander Vitorov Lonoff on charges of conspiring. Excuse me if I butcher his name. On charges of conspiring to act as an unregistered agent of the Russian Federation. All right. Why is that important? Because they're stating that he is involved in business with the UHURU group. You know what I'm saying? The UHURU Movement, excuse me, as well as the African People's Socialist Party in St. Petersburg, Florida, in St. Louis. So the FBI broke down the doors of the UHURU group and the Associated African People's Socialist Party. They're all these groups are all connected, by the way. And yeah, this is why this is important. They had the leader who is, brother well in his 70s, Omali Yeshitula, excuse me. I'm butchering everybody's name tonight. I'm sorry, y'all. I'll get it together. Omali Yeshitula, who FBI agents searched their homes and offices and confiscated computers, cell phones, and financial records. Now, when you watch other interviews, and there are other interviews where brother Baba Omali was interviewed, he stated that they took a lot of historical pieces that they had in storage. They also took a lot of things that to make it difficult for this particular organization to continue operating in fashion that it was. So, and I'm gonna get back to the prosecution piece. You see how the prosecutor was able to get a grand jury to offer an indictment, right? In this particular case, I want to show you something because this is really important based on the story I talked about earlier. The story I talked about earlier, in which we talked about Carolyn Donham, when the grand jury decided to offer a no bill judgment, this is what the no bill judgment means. If the grand jury concludes that there's insufficient evidence to indict an accused, then it will return a no bill. This outcome results in the immediate dismissal of the federal charge that was filed. Do you understand what that means? That means they've closed the book on indicting Carolyn Donham for conspiring to kill Emmett Till. And she's the one that set everything in motion. Had she not had that response to her husband later on that night, no one would have showed up at the Till residence. No one would have shown up. Emmett Till would have been alive. We don't know if he would have lived to this day. He damn sure would have survived, this particular attack. So we have to understand that just because they're skin folk, they're not kinfolk. And I hope that my people in Mississippi will continue to apply pressure and build power for the next election cycle of one Dwayne Richardson, who, when you read his bio, talks about how tough he is on crime, how tough he is on confiscating the property of so-called drug dealers and other offenders in that particular community, but yet and still, somebody who is responsible for one of the most horrific murders in the history of this country, he wasn't able to convince a grand jury to indict her on federal charges of kidnapping that led to the eventual torture and murder of a 14-year-old boy. These are the things we have to talk about, family, in regards to building power. See, this is why when we have a conversation about building power, this is why I say it's important for Black people to understand the necessity of actually having power. When you pull up to these particular people and you have no power, you become a beggar. Nobody respects the beggar. The beggar has to bend over backwards to get favors done. Nobody will ever concede power. You have to take it, and you have to build it. And see, we're in this thing where we think we can deconstruct white supremacy. Well, you can't deconstruct something you have no power to influence. You have no inroads to white supremacy. As Black people, we have no real access to white supremacy except when we are proxy and white supremacy is being used against us. We don't benefit. Only tokenism is gained from white supremacy for Black people anyway. See, this is why when you talk about organizing, and this is when we talk about putting all our chips in one bag, and we start talking about creating opportunities for building Black power. This is what we mean. It's not about walking around in fatigues, as I've said before. And I appreciate, like I said before, I appreciate our family that's in the militias and so forth, but it's not about that as well. What it's truly about is having the potential, having the power to protect and insulate your people against other nations of people. And until we figure that part out, until we stop trying to take shortcuts, until we stop looking for a microwave outcome, we'll continue to be victims at the hands of the institutions and instruments of white supremacy, even when those instruments look like us. So, family, I'm going to tune out tonight. I thank anyone who tuned in. I want to send a special thank you to my sister Crystal Denise for pulling up. I thank you so much. And remember, family, we're starting over. Don't forget to click the link in the box for YouTube, the new YouTube channel, as well as the new Fanbase channel that was created by one Isaac Hayes. I believe it was Isaac Hayes Jr. And it's Black owned, it's Black run. And it's one of those places we don't have to worry about. Speaking of power, real quick before I sign off, I want to speak about why I am broadcasting tonight on this particular platform and not the one that you normally are accustomed to seeing me at. There was an issue with YouTube in my particular channel. And instead of YouTube giving me the opportunity to protest the particular strikes that were levied against my channel, which were very trivial, and I definitely believe there was more to it than just, the fact that these were copyright strikes. Just in the hastiness in which my channel was taken down. I want you to also understand that I understand too that YouTube does not belong to us. It does not belong to Black people. It is not a particular forum that Black people control. They have very tight reins on many of the Black influencers and YouTubers that use the channel. They're far more strict when it comes to copyright, when it comes to fair use policies. And therefore, I understand that as long as we're on their platform, we have to play ball, which is why I'm redirecting all of the people that was following this particular channel in the past, or the channel that was taken off in the past. I am asking that you follow us on Fanbase so that we can build up a Black site that is operated by Black people for Black people. And, it's a shame because I've been wanting to build up Fanbase for a long time. And I'm not talking about build up from the perspective of me, giving them a push, but building up a platform on Fanbase. There's always been, an onsite. So we're on it now. And I hope that the family tunes in. This particular broadcast will be uploaded on the Fanbase site. And let's lock arms, y'all. Let's lock arms, family. Let's start making moves off of these particular platforms that have shown hostility towards us. We don't need them. We don't need anything they offer. We just need each other. Well, with that said, family, peace and power. Ashe.